One rainy afternoon, veteran bus driver Ray McCullough makes a seemingly trivial decision. He refuses to let 11-year-old Malik, a black boy without fare, board his bus. Malik walks off into the storm and disappears. Hours later, he's reported missing. What begins as Ray's desperate attempt to make amends spirals into a harrowing search through a small town hiding dark secrets. Malik wasn't just trying to get home. He was running from something far worse. And as Ray digs deeper, he uncovers a trafficking ring operating along the very bus routes he's driven for years. But the road to redemption isn't just about saving Malik. It's about facing the ghosts of Ray's past, including the daughter he abandoned. In a race against time, Ray must confront both traffickers and his own demons, knowing that one act of kindness could change everything or come too late. The Last Stop is a powerful, emotional novel that explores guilt, redemption, and how even the smallest choices can spiral into life-changing consequences. On a rainy afternoon in the small town of Deepwater, veteran bus driver Ray McCullough makes what seems like a simple, heartless decision. He refuses to let Malik, a young black boy without exact fare, board his bus. Malik begs, explaining that he needs to get home, but Ray holds firm. The boy walks away, disappearing into the storm. Hours later, Malik is reported missing, and Ray's seemingly trivial act becomes the spark that ignites a town-wide reckoning. Racked with guilt and haunted by his own fractured past, Ray sets out to find Malik, determined to make things right. But the deeper he digs, the more he uncovers about Malik's life. A family struggling under the weight of poverty and systemic racism, a sick mother whose only wish is to keep her son safe, and a town blind to the cracks forming beneath its surface. What Ray doesn't realize is that Malik's disappearance is not a simple case of a boy lost in the rain. His refusal to let Malik on the bus that day may have doomed him to an even darker fate. Malik wasn't running home. He was running away. And Ray soon discovers that the bus routes he's driven for years hide secrets far more sinister than he ever imagined. A child trafficking ring operating in the shadows, preying on the town's most vulnerable. With the clock ticking and the entire town blaming him, Ray plunges into a race against time to find Malik. But when Ray's search uncovers a devastating personal connection, a shocking tie to the very traffickers he is chasing, saving Malik becomes more than just a mission. It's his last chance at redemption, a final attempt to fix not only the damage he caused that rainy afternoon but the broken pieces of his own life. The Last Stop is a gripping, emotional novel about how one small decision can spiral into life-altering consequences. It's a powerful exploration of guilt, redemption, and the human need to connect, no matter how long it's been since you've lost your way. As Ray navigates a harrowing path to save a boy he once turned away, he's forced to confront his deepest regrets, his hidden biases, and the question we all face. Is it ever too late to make things right? Ray McCullough, a weathered man in his late 60s, with silver hair, a rugged face lined with laugh lines, and tired blue eyes. His uniform is always clean, though he hunches over as if carrying an invisible weight. Ray is a former truck driver who turned to bus driving to steady himself after losing his family. Years ago, his wife left, taking their daughter, Emily, with her, leaving Ray emotionally distant and bitter. He has become rigid about rules, believing they are the only way to keep his life in order. His guilt over abandoning Emily eats away at him, though he is too proud to reach out and mend their relationship. Malik James, a thin, dark-skinned 11-year-old with expressive brown eyes, who always carries a backpack that is too big for him. His clothes are worn, hinting at his family's financial struggles, but he carries himself with quiet strength. Malik has grown up too fast, caring for his ailing mother and navigating a world that often ignores or discards him. Despite the hardships, he remains hopeful and determined to protect his family. On the day he runs away, he stumbles upon something that puts his life in immediate danger, forcing him to make desperate decisions beyond his years. Cassandra James, a slim woman in her early 30s, with high cheekbones, dark olive skin, and a headscarf to hide her thinning hair from chemotherapy. Her eyes are warm but clouded with exhaustion. Cassandra is a single mother struggling with cancer and poverty. Fiercely protective of Malik, she has had to be a mother and provider despite her illness. Her son's disappearance leaves her heartbroken and angry, especially at Ray, whom she sees as a symbol of the prejudice she and Malik constantly face. Emily McCullough, a young woman in her early 20s with Ray's piercing blue eyes but dyed black hair. She is tattooed and reserved, with a fragile smile hiding years of pain. After Ray abandoned her family, Emily was placed in foster care and fell into the orbit of dangerous people. Now caught up in the trafficking ring that Ray unwittingly uncovers, she has lost all hope of rescue, until her estranged father's investigation brings them back together. Detective Sophia Martinez, a sharp, no-nonsense detective in her 40s with short, dark hair and a piercing gaze. She dresses simply, preferring to blend in, and speaks with a calm authority. Martinez has been investigating missing children's cases in Deepwater for years, but bureaucracy and the cunning of the traffickers keep her from making progress. When Ray comes to her with information, she is skeptical at first, but sees in him a desperate man with nothing to lose, and a possible key to cracking the case. The bus depot, an old, dimly lit building on the edge of town, with flickering fluorescent lights and barely functioning vending machines. It's the hub of Ray's daily routine, a place that embodies the monotony of his life, until it becomes the starting point for his journey to redemption. Deepwater, a small, run-down town with peeling paint on storefronts and narrow streets lined with downed power lines. It's a place where everyone knows everyone else's business, and secrets are hard to keep. The town's poverty makes it an easy target for drug trafficking rings to thrive in the shadows. James's apartment, a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a run-down public housing complex. The walls are yellowed with age, and the smell of old carpet lingers. Despite the worn-out ambience, Cassandra keeps the space as clean and comfortable as possible, with family photos and a few potted plants in the window. The bus routes a network of lonely roads that crisscross Deepwater and neighboring towns. Ray knows every stop by heart, but lately, the familiar routes seem eerie, each one containing potential clues to Malik's disappearance. These routes also reveal hidden corners of the city that Ray has ignored for years. The abandoned factory, a derelict building on the outskirts of Deepwater, surrounded by weeds and broken windows. Once a thriving factory, it's now a base of operations for drug dealers, as well as a storage facility for their victims. It's where Ray discovers the shocking truth, and where the story's climactic showdown unfolds. Martinez asks Ray why Malik didn't board the bus. Ray deflects, saying the boy didn't have a ticket. Martinez leaves him with a blunt warning. Small choices lead to big consequences. Ray returns to the bus terminal. Ray checks the security footage from the bus, hoping to clear his conscience. He finds something alarming: Malik talking to an older man at the previous stop before approaching Ray's bus. Meeting Cassandra Cause, Ray delivers Malik's backpack to Cassandra's apartment. Cassandra accuses Ray of being cold and uncaring, blaming him for her son's disappearance. Her emotional outburst deepens Ray's guilt. Strands begin to unravel. Ray's investigation gains momentum, drawing him deeper into the mystery. Talking to the bus passengers' Cause, Ray interviews the passengers from the day Malik disappeared. A passenger mentions seeing the same older man following Malik. Ray speaks to Detective Martinez again. Cause. Ray informs Martinez about the suspicious man. Ray contacts Emily. Cause. Ray texts Emily, trying to reconnect after years of silence. Factory discovery objective. Ray discovers the drug ring's hideout, but doesn't yet realize how close the danger is. Searching the factory. Cause. Ray follows a lead to the abandoned factory. Malik's friend gives him a clue. Cause. Ray talks to a friend of Malik's, who reveals that Malik was trying to escape something dangerous. 4. Factory discovery. Ray discovers the drug ring's hideout, but doesn't yet realize how close the danger is. Searching the factory, Ray follows a lead to the abandoned factory. Malik's friend gives him a clue. Cause. Ray talks to a friend of Malik's, who reveals that Malik was trying to escape something dangerous. Ray realizes that Malik knew about the drug ring. Malik's friend gives him a clue. Ray talks to a friend of Malik's, who reveals that Malik was trying to escape something dangerous. Ray realizes that Malik knew about the drug ring. Getting closer to the truth, Ray realizes that the traffickers are using bus routes to smuggle children. Martinez listens to Ray's theory about the trafficking ring. They agree to work together, but need more evidence. A text from Emily. Ray finally receives a response from Emily, a cryptic message asking for help. Ray feels a mix of fear and hope, suspecting that she is connected to the trafficking ring. The trafficking ring uncovered. Ray confirms that Emily is trapped in the ring, raising the stakes. The ledger decoded cause. Ray deciphers the ledger and discovers the trafficker's drop-off points. A route matches Emily's last known location. A frantic search begins cause. Ray desperately searches along the bus routes. He realizes that time is running out for both Malik and Emily. Ray risks everything to infiltrate the drug dealer's operation. Confronting the drug dealers, Ray finds a lead on one of the dealers and forces him to talk. The man confirms that Emily is being held at the factory. Malik's whereabouts are discovered. The drug dealer reveals that Malik escaped but is still being hunted. Ray realizes he must find Malik and Emily before it's too late. The climax at the factory objective. Ray confronts his past and saves Malik and Emily. The confrontation at the factory. Ray breaks into the factory with the help of Martinez. They find Emily locked in a room and narrowly rescue her. Malik is found cause. Ray and Emily search the factory for Malik. They find him hiding, traumatized but alive. Redemption in action. Ray and Emily reconnect, setting the stage for healing. Ray apologizes to Malik cause. Ray sits down with Malik and explains why he rejected him that day. Malik forgives him, showing that kindness can prevail. Ray and Emily reconnect cause. Emily opens up about her experiences on the network. Father and daughter begin to rebuild their fractured relationship. Healing begins objective. The characters begin to move forward with hope for the future. Ray and Cassandra make peace cause. Ray visits Cassandra to apologize for his role in Malik's ordeal. Cassandra forgives Ray, grateful that he helped bring her son home. A new beginning cause. Ray and Emily plan to leave Deepwater and start over. Ray finally feels at peace, having made things right with Malik and his daughter. The last ride objective. Ray's final moment on the bus route symbolizes his transformation. Ray drives one last time cause. Ray makes one final shift before stopping. As he pulls into the depot, Malik waves at him from the sidewalk, this time with a smile and an exact fare. Ray laughs, waves him on, and lets him ride for free. Ray McCullough slid his time card into the ancient machine at the bus depot, listening to the familiar thunk as it stamped the time. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a cold glow over the gray walls. Ray adjusted his hat, glancing at the clock on the wall. Another day, another shift, predictable and uneventful, just the way he liked it. "Hey, Ray, you're running the west route again today?" Tom, his younger colleague, called from across the room. Tom always had an easy grin, the kind that came with fewer regrets. "Yep," Ray muttered, tightening the laces on his boots. "Same old route. You've got that stick up your ass about the rules, huh?" Tom teased. "I bet you'd kick Santa off your bus if he didn't have fare." Ray huffed, brushing off the joke. "Rules are rules, Tom." He grabbed his logbook and turned toward the exit. "See you at the end of the day." As Ray walked out into the drizzle, he pulled his jacket tighter around him. He liked the routine, the safety of rules, the predictability of schedules. Life had been a lot easier since he stuck to the straight lines drawn by policy. It was simpler that way. No complications. Ray pulled the bus up to the designated stop on Main Street, the rain drumming steadily on the windshield. A group of tired passengers climbed on board. An old man with a cane, a teenager on her phone, a mother juggling a stroller. Just as Ray closed the door, he saw a figure running toward the bus through the downpour. A boy, maybe 11 or 12, hood pulled tight over his head, his backpack bouncing with each step. Ray sighed and opened the door again. The boy clambered up the steps, water dripping from his jacket. "Thank you," the boy panted, catching his breath. "What's your fare?" Ray asked, glancing at the box. The boy, Malik, though Ray didn't know his name yet, dug into his pockets. His small hands produced a few coins, not enough for the fare. I don't have it all," he admitted, his voice nervous but polite. "I need to get home. It's important." Ray shifted in his seat, uncomfortable. "If you don't have the fare, you can't ride." "Please," Malik said softly, his eyes wide with desperation. "It's just one ride. I really need to get home." Ray shook his head, the words coming out more curtly than he intended. "Look, kid, no fare, no ride. That's the rule." A woman near the front muttered, "Oh, for God's sake, just let him on." Ray shot her a glance but didn't respond. If he made exceptions now, where would it end? He'd spent years driving this route, watching kids try to sneak on, people begging for free rides. You let one person slide, and soon the whole bus would be a free-for-all. "I can't bend the rules for you," Ray said firmly. Malik's shoulders slumped. For a moment, it looked like he might cry, but he bit his lip and turned toward the door. "Okay," he whispered, stepping off the bus. Ray watched from the rearview mirror as Malik pulled his hood tighter and walked down the wet sidewalk, his backpack dragging him down like a weight. For a moment, Ray felt something twist in his chest. Regret, maybe, or guilt. But he shook it off. The boy would be fine. Kids bounced back from disappointment all the time. He shut the door, put the bus in gear, and pulled away from the curb. The rain continued to fall, turning the streets of Deepwater into rivers of glistening asphalt. As the bus rolled along the familiar streets, Ray tried to focus on the road, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the boy. The kid's eyes had been so wide, so full of something. Fear? Sadness? He couldn't quite place it. The radio crackled softly, playing an old blues song. Ray turned it up, hoping the music would drown out the nagging feeling gnawing at him. But it didn't. "Just doing my job," he muttered to himself, gripping the wheel a little tighter. "Not my problem." By the time Ray reached the end of his route, the rain had eased into a steady drizzle. He pulled into a bus stop, waiting for the light to change. The radio station interrupted the song with a news bulletin. "Missing child alert. Authorities are searching for 11-year-old Malik James, last seen near Main Street earlier this afternoon." Malik was wearing a blue rain jacket and carrying a black backpack. Ray's heart stopped. He knew that name. That boy. Ray drove the rest of the route in silence, his hands trembling slightly on the wheel. The words from the radio echoed in his mind. Malik James, missing child. When he finally pulled into the depot, he sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, the rain tapping gently on the windshield. He glanced down at the floor of the bus, and his stomach dropped. Malik's backpack was sitting on one of the seats. That night, Ray sat at his small kitchen table, staring at the backpack. He poured himself a drink, hoping the whiskey would dull the guilt clawing at his insides. But it didn't. His phone buzzed on the table. The caller ID showed a name he hadn't seen in years. Emily. He let it ring. Then again, and again. Finally, it stopped, and the silence in the room felt heavier than before. Ray lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Malik's face, the way the boy had looked at him, hopeful and afraid. He rolled over, pulled the blanket tighter around him, and tried to sleep. But the guilt was too loud. "I should have let him on," Ray whispered into the dark. "I should have just let him on." The next morning, Ray sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of bitter coffee. The backpack sat across from him like a silent accusation. A knock sounded at the door, sharp and insistent. Ray opened it to find Detective Sophia Martinez standing there, her expression unreadable. "I need to ask you a few questions," she said. "About Malik James." Ray's heart pounded in his chest. He knew in that moment that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. This was just the beginning. Ray stood in the doorway, Detective Sophia Martinez watching him closely. Her dark eyes seemed to scan every line on his face, searching for guilt, hesitation, anything. "Tell me again," she said. "Why didn't Malik James board your bus?" Ray shifted his weight. "He didn't have fare," he answered, his voice flat but guarded. "And you didn't let him ride anyway?" Martinez tilted her head slightly, a small frown appearing on her lips. Ray sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I follow the rules. It's not personal." Martinez's frown deepened, and she nodded slowly, as if filing his words away for later. "Small choices," she murmured, "can have big consequences, Mr. McCullough. I hope you understand that." She handed him her card. "If you think of anything at all, give me a call." Then she turned and walked back toward her unmarked car, leaving Ray standing in the doorway, her words circling in his head. Ray's fingers drummed against the counter at the depot as he waited for Tom to pull up the security footage from his route. The depot was dimly lit, the vending machines humming faintly in the background. "There," Tom said, clicking through the footage. On the small screen, Ray's bus rolled to a stop, and there was Malik, hurrying through the rain. Ray watched closely, a pit forming in his stomach. Malik had looked so small out there, soaked to the bone. Then, just before the bus pulled up, a figure stepped into frame. A man standing under the awning of a nearby shop, watching Malik. Ray leaned in closer. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing to the man. Tom shrugged. "Don't know. Didn't see him when I went through this earlier." The man on the screen shifted, glancing around before ducking out of sight. The video ended as Malik reached the bus. Ray's heart beat faster. He felt the first real flicker of fear. What if Malik hadn't been just another kid trying to get home? Ray stood outside the James family apartment, Malik's backpack slung over his shoulder. He hesitated before knocking. The building was old, the paint peeling from the door frames, and the hall smelled faintly of mildew. The door opened, revealing Cassandra James. Her eyes were sunken, her face pale beneath her headscarf. She stared at Ray, her expression tight with suspicion and grief. "I brought this," Ray said awkwardly, holding out the backpack. Cassandra took it slowly, her hand lingering on the strap as though touching it made Malik feel closer. Then her gaze sharpened. "You're the driver, aren't you?" Ray shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah. I didn't know." "You didn't know?" Cassandra cut him off, her voice low but sharp. "You turned him away." Ray swallowed hard. "He didn't have the fare. And that's all that mattered to you?" Her words hit him like stones, small but heavy. "He needed help, and you left him out there." "I'm sorry," Ray whispered. But Cassandra shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "Sorry doesn't bring my son home." Ray drove the late shift that evening, the rain still drizzling down as the bus rumbled through the streets of Deepwater. His mind kept circling back to Malik, the boy's face flashing in every reflection on the windows. He felt it now, guilt settling like a stone in his chest, pressing heavier with every mile. The radio hummed softly in the background. Another missing child bulletin came through, Malik's name repeated over and over, like a chant. Ray gripped the wheel tighter. He thought of Cassandra's words, how she had looked at him, as if she saw straight through him, down to all the cracks and flaws he tried to hide beneath his uniform and rules. He couldn't stop thinking, if I had just let him on. The next morning, Ray found himself back at the bus depot earlier than usual. He couldn't get the man from the footage out of his mind, the one standing under the awning, watching Malik. Tom was surprised to see him. "You're back early. Need to look at something again," Ray muttered, pulling up the footage once more. This time, he paid closer attention. The man had appeared just before Malik ran toward the bus, then vanished into the background. Ray rewound the footage and froze the frame. The man wore a dark jacket, his face partially obscured by the hood. Something about the way he stood, watchful, waiting, sent a chill down Ray's spine. Ray jotted down the time and location, a strange sense of urgency building in him. "I need to know who that guy is." Ray stared at Detective Martinez's card, the edges worn from his pocket. He turned it over a few times before finally dialing the number. "Detective Martinez," her voice came through, crisp and alert. "It's Ray McCullough," he said, clearing his throat. "There's something I think you should know." He explained about the man in the footage, the way he had watched Malik, and how he disappeared just before the bus arrived. There was a pause on the other end. "I'll look into it," Martinez said finally. "But stay out of it, McCullough. Let us handle this." Ray hung up, but the uneasy feeling in his gut didn't go away. He had done the right thing, hadn't he? Told the detective what he knew. So why did it still feel like it wasn't enough? Later that afternoon, Ray sat at his small kitchen table, the worn wood cool beneath his hands. He picked up his phone and, on impulse, sent a text to his estranged daughter, Emily. "Hey, it's Dad. Just checking in. Hope you're okay." He stared at the screen, waiting for the 3 little dots that meant she was typing back. But they never came. Ray sighed and set the phone down. The silence between him and Emily had grown over the years, thick and unbreakable. Maybe it was too late to change that. But then his phone buzzed, a single message from her. "Help me." Ray stared at the message, his heart pounding in his chest. Emily's words were cryptic, but they carried a weight he couldn't ignore. He dialed her number, but it went straight to voicemail. "Emily, it's me," he said, his voice shaky. "I got your message. What's going on? Call me back." He hung up, running a hand through his hair. Something was wrong. He could feel it. And somehow, he knew it was all connected. Malik's disappearance, the man in the footage, and now Emily's sudden plea for help. Ray stood up, a new sense of urgency settling in his bones. He wasn't going to sit back and let things fall apart this time. Not again. This time, he was going to act. Ray sat on a bench at the bus depot, flipping through his logbook, feeling the guilt build like a slow-moving storm. He knew he had to do more than just brood over Malik's disappearance. There were people on the bus that day, passengers who might have seen something. Armed with a notebook, Ray tracked down the regular riders. He found Mrs. Porter first, the old woman with a cane, sitting on her front porch. "Do you remember the boy from that rainy day?" Ray asked. "The one I didn't let ride?" Mrs. Porter squinted, trying to recall. "Oh, yes. Poor boy. He looked so lost." She shook her head sadly. "I told you to let him on, didn't I?" Ray swallowed his guilt. "Did you notice anything strange before he boarded?" She thought for a moment, then nodded. "There was a man, just standing there. I saw him watching the boy. Made my skin crawl, it did." Ray's pulse quickened. The man. He wasn't imagining things. He jotted down Mrs. Porter's words, thanked her, and moved on to another passenger from that day. A teenager named Jess, who was sitting at a nearby bus stop with her headphones on. When he asked her, Jess shrugged. "Yeah, I saw that guy. Gave me weird vibes, you know?" He was wearing a black jacket and kept glancing around like he was looking for someone. Ray's chest tightened. Something was off. This wasn't just a missing child case. It was starting to feel like Malik had been in real danger that day, and Ray's refusal to help might have sealed the boy's fate. Ray knew he had to tell Martinez about the man. Ignoring her earlier warning to stay out of it, he went straight to the police station. Martinez was sitting at her desk, her expression neutral when she saw him walk in. "You again," she said, setting down a folder. "I told you to stay out of this." Ray ignored her tone. "I talked to some of the passengers. More than one of them mentioned a man in a black jacket hanging around when Malik was at the stop." Martinez raised an eyebrow but leaned forward, interested. "Did anyone see what direction he went?" Ray shook his head. "No, but he was watching Malik, like he was waiting for him." Martinez scribbled something down, her demeanor shifting slightly. "I'll run this through missing persons. But this is still a police matter, McCullough. Stay out of it." Ray gave a curt nod, but they both knew he wasn't going to back off. Not this time. Determined to do more, Ray found Malik's best friend, Andre, a quiet boy who lived a few blocks from the James apartment. Ray approached him cautiously as Andre sat on his porch, twirling a basketball between his hands. "I'm trying to find Malik," Ray said gently. "Do you know where he might have gone that day?" Andre hesitated, biting his lip. "He didn't tell me much," the boy admitted, eyes downcast. "But he said he had to get away. Said he saw something scary." "What did he see?" Ray asked, leaning in. Andre shook his head, as if afraid to say more. "He didn't tell me. Just that he had to leave before they found him." Ray sat in his car outside Andre's house, gripping the steering wheel. Malik wasn't just running home. He was running away from something. And Ray had shut the door on him, leaving him alone in the storm, vulnerable to whatever he was trying to escape. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they painted a picture Ray wasn't ready to see. He dialed Martinez again, filling her in on what Andre had told him. "So Malik saw something," Martinez murmured on the other end. "And now he's missing." Ray closed his eyes. "Yeah, and I didn't help him when I could have." There was a heavy pause before Martinez spoke again. "I'll look into Andre's story. But McCullough, this is getting dangerous. Stay out of it." Ray didn't respond. He had no intention of backing down now. That night, Ray couldn't sleep. His apartment felt too quiet, too oppressive. The walls seemed to close in on him, and every shadow made his heart race. He decided to go for a walk, hoping the night air would clear his mind. He ended up near one of the bus stops along his route. As he stood under the street lamp, the sound of a car engine rumbled behind him. A sleek black sedan pulled up, and for a brief moment, Ray saw the man from the footage. Black jacket, cold eyes, watching him from the passenger seat. The car sped off before Ray could react, leaving him standing alone on the empty street. His pulse pounded in his ears. They knew. Whoever was involved in Malik's disappearance, they knew Ray was poking around. And now, they were watching him too. Ray hurried back to his apartment, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He locked the door behind him and leaned against it, catching his breath. This was bigger than he had imagined. And now, he wasn't just trying to make things right for Malik. He had to protect himself. His phone buzzed on the counter. Another message from Emily. "I'm scared, Dad." Ray stared at the screen, his heart breaking. He couldn't ignore it any longer. Malik's disappearance, the trafficking ring, and Emily's plea for help were all connected. He had failed Malik once. He wouldn't fail his daughter, too. Ray sat at his kitchen table, scribbling notes and mapping out the bus routes. If the traffickers were using the buses, there had to be a pattern, a way to predict their movements. He worked through the night, fueled by guilt and desperation. The ledger Martinez had shown him, filled with strange symbols and times, began to make sense in his mind. Certain stops aligned with drop-offs, others with pickups. It wasn't just coincidence. Malik had known. And now, so did Ray. At dawn, Ray picked up the phone and called Martinez one more time. "I know how they're doing it," he said, voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "The buses, they're using the routes to move kids." Martinez was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was low and serious. "Are you sure?" Ray nodded, though she couldn't see it. "Yeah, and I think my daughter's caught up in it, too." Martinez cursed softly on the other end. "I'll meet you at the station in an hour. Don't do anything stupid before then." Ray hung up, his jaw set. He had a lead, a plan, and the will to see it through. This time, he wouldn't wait for permission. He was going to act, and nothing would stop him.